Welcome to another episode of Don't Call It Small. I'm your host, Natasha Foreman. If you don't know me and you have no clue what this podcast is all about, let me share a bit. I'm the CEO of Foreman & Associates, LLC, where we provide consulting, business support, and professional development services. And Don't Call It Small is where we talk all things business, share tips and news that you can use, and highlight the people and ideas behind the products and services that we buy. To learn more about our team, please visit Foreman LLC. Alrighty, y'all. It's Friday. I don't think I've ever done an episode on Friday. I think maybe I did one. I don't know. I'm testing out some things, but I first want to apologize for missing yesterday's taping. I was handling some important matters that consumed more of my time than I expected, so I decided that I would reschedule for today. So before we jump into today's topic, I want to share some business. As I say, I share some businesses and professionals that you should support. I want to shout out some businesses, some professionals that I think that you should check out and support. First up, Monica Fenderson, architectural designer and the powerhouse behind MOSA Architects, MOSA Architects, which is a design firm that specializes in commercial interior design, sustainable architecture, and real estate development. They're located in Grayson, Georgia. Visit their website at mosadesignstudios.com. And let's see. You can also follow them on Instagram at MOSA_architects, and then also at MOSA_studios. Next up, stay tuned for the emerging venture, Lost Coast Roast Cold Brew Coffee. I'm going to say that again. Lost Coast Roast Cold Brew Coffee. Say that 10 times real fast. They got their start in Northern California along the coast, and they are working to get their cold brew coffee in Atlanta and in other cities across the country. What makes Lost Coast so special and different? Well, besides the fact that they source their organic cold brew coffee from sustainable, shade-grown, biodiverse farms that leave very little impact on the environment, in a lot of ways positively impact the environment. They also cold brew their coffee for 18 hours, and it has a chocolatey, peanut buttery, graham cracker flavor profile. Yeah, I'm gonna say that again. A chocolatey, peanut buttery, graham cracker flavor profile. Did you just drool hearing that? Something else that's so special is that they source their coffee from the Fabretto Foundation Organic Farmers in northern Nicaragua. If you have no clue where that is, that's Central America. 5 cents of every bottle sold is donated to the foundation, and which I think is also very cool. I first found out about the company by viewing my friend Billy Harris's uncle Kevin Stewart's IG page. That's a tongue twister itself, right? So I looked at Kevin's IG page, and he was promoting the brand, and I was interested in what Lost Coast was all about. So check them out. Visit their website, lostcoastroast.com. That's Lost Coast, C-O-A-S-T, roast, R-O-A-S-T.com. They ship their product and are also interested in establishing relationships with retailers. So you can follow them on Instagram at Lost Coast Roast. Last but not least, let me shout out luxury press-on nails business, Nothing Petty About Me. I love that. It's so catchy. Petty, P-E-D-I. Nothing Petty About Me. It's for girls on the go, and for those of you struggling during restricted access to nail salons, this may be a great option for you. It's so crazy because I was really trying to think of ways in which I could be creative with my nails, since most likely my salon is closed. I'm assuming it is. And if not, I'm just assuming it is. And my friend, Janae Wilborn, she was shouted out her friend on Instagram. And I was like, what? What's this? So I hurried over to Nothing Petty About Me on IG, all one word, right? Nothing Petty About Me. And it's amazing. She's got numerous shapes like short, medium, tapered, and long coffin. She has tapered long coffins, long stiletto, medium stiletto. She's got tons of designs and colors to choose from, with nail sizing kits available to ensure that you get the right fit for your nail bed. Right? You don't want anything that makes your fingers look either, like kind of alien or monster, or like, I don't know, like you like a werewolf. I don't know, but some folks really don't understand that they really need to have their nail shaped. The fits, yeah. So, the nails come in a set of for $20, or you can get the Cute in Quarantine 4-set special for $60. Now, there's something else that's really special about this. Is when Atlanta recovers from this pandemic, be sure to contact her on Instagram at Contoured by S Latiese. All one word, Contoured. If you don't know how to spell contoured, it's CONTOURED by S Latiese, LATIESE. She provides non-invasive cavitation and other body contouring services. So right now, of course, you can't get that work done, but you can get your nails, your glamour nails from S Latiese. And let me know, be able to tag me, tag Don't Call It Small, so we can check out the nails on your little fingertips. All right, I'm actually looking into getting some myself, so stay tuned for that. Alrighty then. There's my shout outs for the week. If you want your business or someone else's businesses highlighted on Don't Call It Small Business Podcast, be sure to send us an email at don'tcallitsmallbiz with a Z at gmail.com, or you can DM us on Instagram at Foreman LLC. Moving right along, and let me double check something, because I have a tendency of having 18,421 tabs open on my computer. And it starts making all kinds of noises. There's a quote attributed to Warren Buffett that I'd like to share with you today. Mr. Buffett said, "It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll do things differently." If you guys listen to this podcast on a regular basis, then you know that you've heard me say that every problem comes with an opportunity. All mistakes and failures come with lessons to be learned. And there's former President John F. Kennedy is quoted as saying, quote, "When written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger and the other represents opportunity," end quote. So today's look at the current and future impact on business due to this pandemic called COVID-19, aka Rona, we're going to really roll up our sleeves some on this, and future episodes, I'm going to dissect other different elements, and we're just going to really go through the business and management and leadership and all the things that make all these ingredients come together in a perfect entree. We'll go through those, over the weeks. As a professor of business management, I tend to draw on what I've learned in the field as well as in academia, right? Because I've had field experience long before I became an academic, right? And one major contributor in business and management is academic and author Henry Mintzberg, who challenged universities' approach to teaching the discipline of management. Mintzberg's quoted years ago saying, "What we call a financial crisis is really at its core a crisis of management, and not just a crisis of management, but a crisis of management culture. In other words, what you had is a detachment of people who know the business from people who are running the business," end quote. Is that not so relevant today? The great thing about me being in a consultant and being in the field as well as teaching at the same time is that I get the opportunity to bring those real world applications into the classroom in real time, so that my students get a heavy dose of application versus just theory, right? And COVID-19 has made businesses face some harsh realities that they weren't truly prepared for a crisis. That's the reality. We've also learned that we didn't learn much after our last global financial crisis, which means we may slip back to stuck on stupid once we make it out of this crisis, because we just like to obviously repeat, it's just like over and over. Um, we tend to be creatures of habit, right? Unfortunately. So I want to share something that was written by an executive. He said, for some organizations, near-term survival is the only agenda item. Others are peering through the fog of uncertainty, thinking about how to position themselves once the crisis has passed and things return to normal. The question is, what will normal look like? While no one can say how long the crisis will last, what we find on the other side will not look like the normal of recent years. Friends, 11 years ago, Ian Davis, a managing partner at McKinsey, wrote those words. And sadly, that still rings true 11 years later, and even more so. Like, it's just a double dose of that. So what's our next normal? Do you remember the U.S. and the world pre and post 9/11? Some of you remember the world pre and post the Vietnam War. Pre and post. I mean, we can just keep going, right? But we're just going to stick with 9/11. Now, let me bring it even more recent. Do you remember your life before this COVID-19 outbreak? Aha. Yeah. Look at your life now. Look at your business, if you have one. Your job, if you're still employed. How have these things changed in a matter of weeks and months? Let's look at the response to this outbreak and the impact that it's had so far and how it will change our lives and businesses moving forward. If you listen to episode 34, I discussed leading and managing during the 3 phases of crisis. What we're in right now, we're currently in the second phase, which is crisis. We're in the muck of things. We're shoulders deep, neck deep, and in some places around the world, we're eyebrows deep in it. If you haven't heard that episode 34, be sure to check it out. In the midst of this crisis, businesses that provide food, household supplies, and paper goods are working like crazy to meet the demand with supply. It's all hands on deck in most cases. And as I shared in episode 34, as well as in episode 35, mega retailers are having to ramp up their hiring efforts to get enough able bodies in their warehouses, driving their trucks, and on the floors of their stores to handle the nonstop requests for the daily essentials we took for granted months ago. Some of y'all, I'm saying y'all because it's just so much grittier when I say y'all. Some of y'all may be at the point of punching someone in the mouth if you even thought they were hoarding toilet paper. Like if you were in the store right now and you just saw someone like just dumping like bundles and bundles of toilet paper, like those 12 and 24 packs, you may go off. It may be your snapping point, right? Because at that point, there's no way that person needs that much toilet paper between now and the next. Come on now. No. You may just actually just lose it. Am I right? You know that I am. With all of this going on, some of you are at your breaking point. And some people are insensitive to this. Some people are just showing how selfish they truly are, right? We're all selfish, but they're showing how selfish they truly are. And with all of the fast hiring, what's the likelihood that they are hiring, these mega retailers I'm talking about? What's the likelihood they're hiring quality applicants? Or are they just trying to fill a void by meeting numbers, right? We just need bodies with pulses to do the job. Episode 32, we discussed finding and selecting the right team members. So if you didn't hear that episode, check it out. Many businesses have been dealing with slowdowns in operations, especially if they aren't deemed as essential product and service providers. And of course, you have numerous companies who've been forced to close their doors and pray that this crisis will end sooner than later. Many businesses have switched to remote work. Now that's a painful laughing matter for thousands of workers who never experienced remote work. I've worked remotely for more than 13 years. And before that, on and off for 7 years. So, if I wanted to say, probably, I don't know how many years that would be combined. with those on and off of the 7 years. So this adjustment for me is an adjustment, right? It's not an adjustment for me. I just have to adjust to my neighbors being home all day. I have to adjust to my engagement and interaction outside of the home, because I had made changes, like even with Foreman and Associates. I had an office in Smyrna, but years ago I said, why do I have this office? I'm never even there. I was either going to clients' offices or meeting at different country clubs or different restaurants, or I wasn't there. I was paying to not be there. It made no sense. And I had workers, employees here and in New York and in other states. They're not here. Like they weren't even working in the office. They were working remotely. It just didn't make any sense. So I made that adjustment years ago. The hardest thing for me really is just the interactions with others, because now people are in this bubble and there's not this free flow. So I was accustomed to how people, when they left for work and when they came home from work, and like there's just different things that I knew, and I could pace myself, and I knew when I could go to the store at certain times, and when I could go to my my P.O. box. Like those things have been shifted, but it's not that major where I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. At the same time, some of you aren't faring so well. It's a shock to your system because there's no structure, order, or normalcy in this Flash Gordon quick switchover that you just experienced. This is especially true for educational institutions that are forced to move classes online. And I mean, I'm not saying nanny boo boo, but you're seeing that online teaching isn't as easy as you thought. I'm not trying to rub salt in your wounds. Those of you that are now having to teach online. I just want you to pause and think about the words that you spewed for years about online learning and the jokes you made about the educators who slaved away to make that learning experience as rigorous or more rigorous than traditional online on-campus classes. Because that's what I used to always hear is that, online classes, those are just easy breezy. Those are just, the idiot box TV. That's just so simple. That's not a challenge. Those students can't possibly be learning the information. And the thing is, you never taught online, so you don't know. And so you didn't understand the complexities and the nuances of having to take and create an environment that would resemble as much as being on campus as it could, but then having the rigor that would be more intense than being on campus. Because there is a lot of convenience to teaching on campus. I teach on both. I teach on campus and online. And it is definitely more laxed and laid back for me to teach on campus. Because I know at the least, or whatever, however you want to look at most, at least, I'm going to see that class once a week. I may see the class twice a week, right? But I'm not having to engage with them possibly 5 to 6 days a week. Unlike my online courses where there is heavy engagement 5 to 6 days a week. So for those of you that are just now experiencing it, it ain't easy. It can be stressful because teaching and managing online requires you to muster up a different skill set that's been worked out little or not at all. And sometimes it feels like you're herding blindfolded cats, but it's your job to engage them, motivate them, lead them, and do so successfully. People think that teaching is easy because I know this topic and I can just teach it, and it's not. Managing is not easy just because you're like, all I'm doing is telling people what to do. No, it's not. So now having to teach and or manage online requires you to learn how to manage your time better. You have to be on it. There is no lax. There is no waiting for, a few weeks to return grades and all that. No, you can't. There's no waiting, to follow up on someone's email or report. Your time management has to be mastered. It forces you to engage differently and more frequently. And you have to do all of this while your children, pets, and significant others and your friends and neighbors are asking for treats and attention. I mean, before coming in here to record this episode, my dog Bishop had an expectation that we would be playing, because what else could I possibly be focused on other than pouring constant love and affection on him before and after he takes one of 100 mini naps throughout the day. That's what I feel like. It's not 100 mini naps, but that's what it feels like. It feels like he eats, sleeps, does his potty breaks, plays, and just is like a repeat, like over and over and over and over. So I felt so bad telling him, baby, you got to wait. Mommy's got to do this podcast. But with all that's going on, what we're also seeing is inaction and stagnation in many entities, right? They can't seem to make up their mind about what to do in the now and the present. We see this in local, state, and federal governments. It's just no disrespect, but it's what we're seeing. It's like, do we lock down or not? Isolate or quarantine? Close public parks and beaches or keep them open? Close them and then a week later or so, open them back up. A lot of leaders are operating out of fear. Right? And this is what I discussed in episode 34. It's a fear of the economic impact of not having bodies paying money to establishments that money can then be taxed and brought back into that state, right? So, crap, what we gonna do? And if the money's come, and remember, we have state and fed, so money's having to come in. This money needs to come in. Both these governments need to thrive. They are businesses. They are businesses that need our money in order to make it happen. So whether it's coming through taxes through commerce, or it's coming through taxes through employment, or however the revenue stream is coming, they need us engaged in that system in order for them to survive. Something else that's interesting is episode 31, I shared the employer perspective of, what your employees wish you understood and what you wish they knew. And who would have known that several weeks later, the concepts and arguments that I shared would be the very things that a lot of disgruntled workers today are yelling about. When you have workers throw up their hands and walk off the job at Amazon and other companies because they fear the working conditions aren't conducive to a healthy environment, we're reminded that companies aren't truly focused on the right things. Your employees must come first. It must be people over profits. And you can't arrogantly say, well, I can get new employees. I mean, I just laugh at that when I hear people say that. I mean, you hear it over and over for years. This isn't just a now. This has been happening for years. I remember having an argument with an employer about that. It just really, I knew him personally, and I just looked at him like he was the biggest idiot on the planet. Because what I want to say right now is I need you guys to scroll back, listen to my previous episodes of this podcast so you can get a dose of reality. The cost of replacing workers can cause a business to spiral downhill quickly. It is easy to say I can replace if you don't understand what that really means to replace. If you don't really understand to the penny what that means to replace that worker, then you are just being a jerk for jerk's sake. Like it's just idiotic. You are actually thinking that you are bigger than and more important than the worker. You're thinking that dollar coming in is more important than the worker. When those workers walk away, you'll realize who makes your company run. We're looking at some major things. Unemployment rates are soaring. Every week, those numbers are staggering of applications that are going in. And not everyone that applies is going to get it. So, think about the backlash from that. Businesses don't know how to cover payroll, benefit payouts, and other overhead expenses. I suggest if you're a business, you visit SBA.gov to see various grants and loans that are being offered to businesses with less than 500 employees. Every entity is trying to find out ways to put band-aids on the situation, right? Because they need to they're trying to do band-aids and tourniquets and everything, trying to stop the bleeding. It's not trying to heal anything. It's just like, oh gosh, it hit an artery. Can we stop that? So they don't just bleed out right here. So everyone is trying to find ways. And what's so crazy is that we never planned for this, which is crazy because we just went through the global financial crisis. Like, it was like, I'm just not getting it. It wasn't that long ago. It wasn't like it's 50 years ago and it's just so faintly in our memories that it's just in our history books. No, we experienced this, right? Some of us lost our homes. We lost so much behind it. Businesses were, just literally crumbled. They were just hacked away because of it. And I'm like, we got comfortable again. I need you guys to visualize this. Visualize cab drivers, Uber and Lyft drivers sitting at home with no one to drive around. Restaurant workers at home because the restaurant had to close. Hotel workers with no hotel to work in. Flight attendants, pilots, airport personnel at home for months. Because why? Planes are parked at the airport with nowhere to go because flights keep getting canceled. That fuel ain't cheap, folks. I mean, thank God for our sanitation workers collecting trash. Thank God for our healthcare workers. Thank God for our firefighters and law enforcement. Imagine all these people at home not working. Imagine banks closing their doors, not even having drive-up services. What if those truck drivers who transport the goods that we steadily buy begin finding themselves at home, not driving those trucks? We're seeing a large number of senior care facilities being impacted by COVID-19 and here in Atlanta. One center in particular, Arbor Terrace Cascade by the Walmart and Home Depot off Cascade Road in Southwest Atlanta. If you're from or live in Atlanta, you may know that area. They experienced 77% of their residents, they have 60 residents there, 77% of those residents tested positive for COVID-19. 6 people have passed away so far. 13 out of 81 staff also tested positive. They said that one of the biggest issues that they had and they've been facing is that more than 70% of those who tested positive were asymptomatic. They weren't showing signs and symptoms of being sick. How can senior care facilities prepare for an outbreak of this magnitude if supplies were gobbled up and hoarded by consumers and those trying to monopolize on a crisis by reselling online for a huge markup? It is crazy because we think of, now it'd be totally different and people are being exempt from the fallout of all of this because they're saying, COVID-19 is different. It's not the flu. Like, we need to stop saying it's the flu. It's totally different. And because of that, we could never have thought to plan accordingly. We never, I don't know how, our federal government decide to, defund part of the CDC and to dismiss, their recommendations from the previous administration and, fire previous members who had been working through the last administration, all because why? They had been part of the last administration. And you turn around and the people that you need in order to prepare you for crisis, you don't have a crisis management team. It's like, hello. We see this not just in the government, we see this in our businesses, right? We see that people don't structure human resource teams. They just figure, what's the point? The point is, if you had a strong HR team that was fully embedded in taking part in the strategic and tactical and operational plans of your organization, you'd have better answers to and solutions to the problems that you face. People are so busy being cheap, but you're trying to go and chase that dollar. That's the funny thing. You'll spend so much to chase that dollar, but you will not invest in the people that you need in order to earn the dollar. So what we're seeing in a lot of instances, a lot of organizations, is what we see is that most people, either they freeze like a deer in headlights when crisis hits. It's as though, like, we think we can hide our head under the covers and wait for the boogeyman to go about his business and we'll be undetected, right? You just kind of like lay there still. It's not going to see me. It won't find me here. That's how some of us act. And so we either do that or we rush to judgment about the possible outcomes without actually putting much thought and analysis into it. You know what I mean? Like calling it, it's just the flu. It'll go away in no time. Just treat it like the flu. Stop overreacting. Most people with the flu exhibit symptoms of some sort. But look how many people who aren't showing symptoms. I mean, heck, you could have it and not know it. I mean, what if I had it and then I stroll into the local retailer and unknowingly spread it to other people? That is our reality. it's the cooties that kids always feared, even though they had no clue what the heck cooties were. That's what it is. It's that invisible thing that we're all fearful of. And it's like, how I see it in an organizational perspective is that a major issue during this crisis is that managers aren't speaking to their workers, right? And that's managers on frontline, mid-level, and senior. They're just not speaking to their workers. They're doing a silo mentality, which is funny because they don't want their employees to do it, but they do it. They aren't sitting down and gaining the insight and perspective of their workers. Nope. They keep treating the workers as laborers, simply pay to do a job with as little back talk as possible. It's like the parent-child relationship. Do as I say, not as I do. And it's maddening to me because the thing is you have people on the front line that are having to then endure the working conditions. You should gain their perspective on how best to handle it. Imagine if, okay, so if you had already considered that, if there is a global crisis and what is the things that we'd possibly need? Oh, these masks that, we laughed at China when SARS broke out and H1N1, and we laughed, and we even laughed when Asians walked around the U.S. with their mask on. It was funny. It ain't funny now, though, huh? Y'all up here wrapping all kinds of stuff around your faces now. I've seen people with ski masks and look like a sock that was somehow velcroed around their face. You guys are doing everything you can now. So imagine if you sat down with your workers, you had your employees sit down, and you had already then mapped out what are your thoughts? What are your fears about this situation or about this pending situation or about the idea, the concept of something of this magnitude or worse happening here in this state, in this city, in this town, in this, this facility. Gain their perspective so you then see how they will then react if a crisis happens, while a crisis is happening. Right? Because you want their loyalty. So why aren't you giving them your loyalty in return? It's just a two-way relationship. This isn't, come on now. Even booty calls are mutually rewarding, right? So I'm just going to be blunt about it. Stop treating people as though there is just a transaction. This is not a one-night stand. You're never going to see them again. Heck, this day and age, you're going to see that person at least 4 times. And you're like, oh, dang, I didn't expect to run into them. Well, duh. You met them at your local coffee shop. Where do you think they drink coffee almost every day? But, do you guys see what I'm saying? To pivot slightly, but to stay within the work environment and how we're not putting our workers first. I'm curious as to why healthcare workers are being fired, suspended, written up, and some of them are even being like arrested or whatever for wearing protective masks to work. I'm kind of baffled. I know it's not widespread, it's not clear across the nation, but it is in pockets around the nation, including here in Georgia and other places. And I'm kind of baffled because shouldn't you want your workers to be as protected as possible to reduce the probability of them catching the virus and getting sick, and then unable to treat the patients, or they were treating a patient for something else, but they coughed, got sick, and now spread the virus over to this patient who came in for something totally different, and now that patient goes home, spreads it to their family, and their family. It's just a domino effect. That seems like the logical thing, right? Protect your healthcare worker so that they can then do their job, not possibly get sick, not help spread this virus anymore. It sounds logical. Unless, of course, you want your nurses and doctors to get sick to follow through with this goal of herd immunity, which is a risky and rather idiotic approach when in that vein, right? And one that would definitely lead to more people dying from the virus. It's totally different when you're saying as a widespread kind of, we're trying to gain this over time of kind of thing. But what you would not think to do is that you're going to infiltrate your healthcare space in order to help speed up this herd immunity that you're hoping for, even though you can't even prove that it's possible, because you've seen that people have antibodies, it has not been proven that those antibodies mean immunity. So why are you experimenting on your workers and the general public to try to gauge, like you're doing scientific experiments in real time. Talking about some human tests, you're literally testing on people right now, and people don't even know. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. But it seems that people either choose to not make a decision or they rush and make a reckless one. And to me, I think that punishing your workers for wanting to protect themselves and the patients that they serve, I think that's a reckless decision. Hospitals in Georgia have chosen to, here's just another thing that just makes no sense on a management scale or leadership scale or any kind of scale, a human scale. Some hospitals in Georgia have chosen to disregard the needs and demands of their nurses and doctors, refusing to make pay adjustments, enhance their other benefits, protect them in other different ways, provide some type of incentives for working in a challenging environment for 12, 18, 20 plus hours a day, right? And so are we really surprised to see that nurses and doctors are leaving Georgia, heading up to New York to help with the epicenter of the U.S. outbreak? And doing so knowing that they will be handsomely rewarded for their service. Yeah. Yep. Nurses are being promised pay of between $4,000 and $6,500 per week to work in New York hospitals and facilities. And like they're expected to be like a contract of like 21 weeks or so something like that, give or take, right? Of course, now let's be clear. This has opened the gateway of foolery by recruiters claiming upwards of $10,000 a week to healthcare professionals that they know lack the experience to be working in these environments. And so just understand that people will prey on your fears and desperation. And I have an episode that's scheduled that is going to be dedicated to how to avoid being prey to predators online, in person, and other scenarios. But what is crazy is with you having Georgia nurses and doctors leaving Georgia because honestly, they feel like they're just, disregarded, whatever. They're going to where they feel that they'll be more appreciated and they could be protected in serving. What you're now going to leave is a gap in the Georgia hospital system. And with common sense of looking at how big major cities go and how they operate, and understanding that Atlanta, when we say Atlanta, it's not just the city of Atlanta, it's the metropolitan. It's like 12 counties or whatever, right? When you really look at it. When you look at it, it is a blend of rural and city. It's like this mixed kind of thing, like a hodgepodge. It is literally positioned to be another big bubble of this virus, right? That means you're going to have healthcare workers not here in order to then fill in that gap when all of a sudden numbers start to soar, because the numbers here in Atlanta are just like steadily going up, 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 up. They're not flatlining. They're not going down. They're just going up. So if you have people leave because you choose not to respect and care and do your best to protect them, and they're going where, they can be appreciated, you're about to have a whole bunch of people in Georgia that can't be cared for. So who's going to come to our rescue here? Huh? Because who want to come to you to help out with you if they've already seen how you already treated your nurses and doctors who hurried up and got out of here, either through force or out of voluntarily just saying, I'm done with you. Like they broke up with you, you didn't break up with them. Or vice versa. Like, who's going to rush here to say, well, you know what? I'll take that treatment. Yeah. So those are different things to really consider. And like I said, I'll have different episodes that we're going to really just like kind of address a lot of these different things from a leadership and management perspective. So how does a company recover post-crisis? I mean, there's so many different things to think about. I mean, when things begin to settle down, how do you, really gain your footing? Businesses are going to struggle and find the process and transition extremely challenging. A lot of industries will have to reset their supply chain because we already anticipate major disruption in multiple geographies. Wherever you're weak in the chain, you're going to find yourself the most tested. Like, you remember the saying, you're only as strong as your weakest link? Well, this is very true, and we're seeing this, right? I just read an article yesterday written by Ron Miller for TechCrunch, where he discusses a new tool offered by Ascent Compliance. It's a company that helps large manufacturers like GE manage complex supply chains through an online data exchange. And their new tool announced this week lets any company, whether they're a customer of Ascent compliance or not, upload bills and materials and see on a map where COVID-19 is having an impact on their supply chain. And they have the data and the tooling to develop this data-driven supply chain map using the data from the World Health Organization to identify COVID hotspots. Now, if your company wants to participate, you simply go to their company website, fill out a form, and then one of their team members will contact you, walk you through the process of uploading your data to the platform. Once it's uploaded, a map is generated showing the parts of the world where your supply chain is most likely to be disrupted, so you can see the level of risk based on your individual data. Having this information, a company can either navigate around these points or find ways to address these risks. But at least you're not flying, driving blindly, right? What's interesting is post-COVID-19, we may see the shrinking of supply chain globalization if production and sourcing moves closer to the end user. It's a possibility. I want you to imagine that. Now, for those of you that don't have this global presence, let's narrow things down to the smaller businesses that aren't global, or you don't utilize components or products in whole or part from other countries. Let's say you're local and everything you basically do is local, and you could, but still, you could be drastically impacted by local and regional outreach. And add on top of that, if your business has to or already has closed its doors for the safety of workers. So how can you realign now and in the future? If your products were never sold online, or you never invested much marketing and efforts to generate an online presence, now is the time to sit down, roll up your sleeves, and map out your strategy for turning in-store sales to online sales. It doesn't matter that when you come back, you may have a store. You may or you may not have that brick and mortar store, right? But you still now can have a strong online presence so that you can then, guess what, have greater reach, which means you can get more customers. Which then will help you generate the types of revenue streams that you can to be able to increase the rate of pay and the different benefit packages that you offer your team members. If assembly and packaging is required by your team right now, right? If you're looking at that, how can you address this if you no longer have a work site to work from? Because that's what a lot of people are experiencing. There's some different things I want you to just ponder question. Is it possible to establish some type of delivery and pickup system each week where workers are given the supplies and packaging needed to fulfill online orders? I don't know, maybe something that's boxed up, that's bagged up, I don't know, that you can be able to, because maybe you have stuff that's delivered to your work site, and then you plus one other person or two other people, whatever, however you can do this, the distancing of 6 to 10 feet, can then be able to break these things down and then package them up into bundles that can then be picked up or dropped off to workers, right? Maybe it's just something that, just coming up with ideas. It's all about coming up with different ideas that it could be possible solutions. You need, of course, to place great emphasis on your website. Like if you do something like this and you're then now transitioning to online mostly, or online only, or online for now, whatever concept you're going for, you need to make sure you have great emphasis on your website. There's going to be some order delays due to COVID, so let people know up front. So customers aren't expecting a 1, 2, or 3 day turnaround when it's going to be like 7 to 10 or 14 days. Amazon let customers know not to expect their regular products to be shipped out, since they're mostly focused on household supplies, medical, health, etc. That's their priority. So that next day and 2 day turnaround isn't being promised. That doesn't mean that you order some vitamins. I think we ordered some vitamins. And it arrived 7 days or 4 days, whatever it was. But it wasn't like the next day or 2 day turnaround. And that was fine, right? So be as realistic as possible. Everyone appreciates transparency. Our obsession with convenience is another major reason why the U.S. is struggling with this outbreak. We don't want to part from our espressos, our barber and hairstylists, our mani-pedis. What do you mean I can't get my car detailed so it can just sit in my garage? Yeah, we're entitled. We don't know. We really don't understand restrictions. We just want to come and go as we want. We want to shop and be where we want to be. And screw you with putting these X's on the ground in the store telling me I got to stand this far back. I don't want to stand this far back. I like being all up on someone's neck, like in line. And so I am actually appreciating these 5 and 6 feet markers they're putting on the ground, because I used to be so annoyed with people who were darn near have their shopping cart on my heel. Like, back up off me. So I'm appreciating this. I hope they try to still implement that, still try to enforce something, even if it's like 4 feet. Keep people back. Oh, goats. So, let me get back to this. So, be very clear that the instant gratification won't be their reality, but orders will be fulfilled as quickly as possible. And really, to help with greater confidence, build in some kind of calendaring system where auto emails are issued, right? They automatically go out, they're scheduled to go out, notifying the customer of the order status. Not just when the order was taken and when it's shipped, but in those moments in between. I call it the abyss that we're not familiar with. Like we know when the order was accepted, right? So it says, okay, we processed through our debit card, credit card, or however we paid. And so we got that first notification that, okay, your order's been received. And then, sometimes we'll get a notification letting us know that our order's being processed, right? Sometimes. Some companies don't even do that. And then usually we'll get an email letting you know if there's some kind of delay in your order, or that your order's been shipped, right? And sometimes there's a tracking number so you can track the package. That's really best case. Some folks, you just order and then you just get it when you get it. And just get over it. So having something like that where you can spend the time to let people know the status, right? That can be very helpful. People will then feel comfortable in the abyss. This is also a great time for those of you who are desiring to start a business to look at your business through the lens of COVID-19 and beyond. Look futuristically. If it's not an online business, how will you establish a strong online presence? Because you really do, in some ways, need to have a strong online presence. People who are lawyers and doctors, dentists, whatever, you should still be able to find a way to create an online presence so that you can still see a patient who can't come in. You can still conduct a web conference thing, with a client who can't come into your office for whatever reason. It should not be the case that someone can't gain a service because they can't physically be in your presence. So think of those different things. How can you generate a revenue stream in a different way? How can you use technology to benefit your business and your employees? How will you reinvent your business? As I always say, it's about reimagining it, right? Reimagining the box. We get in this box and we don't want to get out of it. It's a box and I'm confined by the box and it's this box. It ain't got to be a box. Reimagine it. We are moving towards contactless commerce. Like, they've already been prepping you for it. I don't think they were prepping it because of any particular virus outbreak, but think about it. How many things they were just like, you can just tap your thing and go, and you can just, use the app and go, and you don't even have to do this, and just go, and just go. We are reducing the time it takes for a consumer to be in a store. And that's the reason why, if you notice, a lot of the large retailers have made it where most of their inventory is online, that you can't even access it in the store. You may be able to have it shipped to store for pickup, and then some things they're like, no, it can only be shipped directly to you. And guess what? If it's $25 and over or $50 and over, hey, we'll even cover the shipping costs. But they're trying to make it where they're limiting the contact in commerce. So understand that. Can you see it? Can you really? Our pre-COVID-19 life is no more. We won't be going back to the old status quo. What you were accustomed to is not there. That is no longer our norm. Even after the CDC and World Health Organization, other government agencies say the coast is clear, we won't trust and believe it, at least not for most of us. We will be scared, so we won't be rushing back to brick and mortar places. We claim we will. It's amazing when I see on Instagram, everybody's talking about all the restaurants they can't wait to visit. I'm like, I laugh, because for the most part, we won't. Because the moment someone coughs or sneezes, we're going to seize up in sheer panic. We won't look at that glass and the utensils and plates on the tables at that restaurant the same way. We're going to naturally distance ourselves for a while. So how does your business respond to this reality before it manifests? You have to get ahead of stuff. Like, it's already come through and clobbered. Can you look ahead to see where it's going, where it can go, and the different ways and different directions it can go? How can you do your part to reduce the fear and anxiety in your place of business? What can you implement, install, enact to protect your workers and customers? Think about these things. Think about all the ways in which you can now be innovative and how you can now readdress how you approach your business. But remember what I said about problems and solutions, issues and crises, and opportunities that arise from them. In what ways can your company improve efficiency and performance? You'll need to look at your budgets, your financial reports, examine and possibly reconsider how you define fixed versus variable cost. Before COVID-19, there were a lot of things that were nice to have. They were luxuries and conveniences. Post COVID-19, we'll have to focus on what is needed and required to operate successfully. What functions and processes can be automated? What jobs can be realigned, combined, or eliminated? How can you compensate your workers in unique ways? In episode 30, we talked about alternative benefit packages and payment structures. How many businesses push back on healthcare plans for workers because honestly, they were being cheap? Low down, dirty, cheap. And they didn't truly value their workforce. That's all it comes down to. Like, let's stop trying to sugarcoat it. You did not pay on healthcare for your workers. You intentionally put people from full-time to part-time. You intentionally made sure you had more part-timers than full-timers because you were too cheap to pay for health insurance. Plain and simple. You made people that were supposed to be employees, you found a creative loophole, or you just blatantly just disregarded the IRS laws to make them 1099 workers because you were too cheap to pay these benefits. You didn't want to then have to pay out the different taxes to the state and Fed because of it. You're being cheap, period. And you don't truly value them. Let's just keep it real. Stop fronting. Stop pretending. Stop trying to seem as though you're holier than thou. You're not. That's why you chose to do what you did. Because if you have this revenue that's coming in, that's allowing you to live this certain lifestyle and you'll be able to provide all these different things, but yet your workers are barely living paycheck to paycheck. Matter of fact, they get through one paycheck and then that next paycheck is only by the grace of God. Like, they're up here acting like they got a lottery check in their hand every time a paycheck comes because it is literally their lifeline. That is not living. It is existing. And we're barely doing that. How many companies, how many of these businesses are going to reconsider all of this post-COVID-19? Definitely not all of them. We're going to be real, but I'm optimistic that some will. I'm optimistic because we see that some companies in the midst of this chaos, they're saying, oh crap, we didn't really realize it. Like, we did, but we just really didn't. We did, but we just thought, hey, everything's gravy. But now we're seeing that our workers are suffering beyond what they were already suffering. And so we're going to now ramp up their pay. We're going to do this and we're going to do that because, oh man, which is what you should have already been doing. You're making millions and billions of dollars. You should have already been doing that. Instead, we ramp up CEO salaries and bonuses and golden parachutes and everything else, and we're not focusing on the people that actually get the job done. There's a difference between knowing how the business and running the business, right? So once I really do think that there's going to be some companies that will do this post-COVID-19. They're going to reconsider the pay and the benefits, and I'm optimistic that some will. And once their revenue builds back up, they'll remember the pain and fear, the uncertainty, and the realization that without the workers, they don't have a business. And this also applies to small businesses as well, right? That folks are going to sit back and say, all right, how can we do this? Because we can't survive without them. Not possible. Educational institutions will truly have to rethink their business model. I mean, heck, it's long overdue anyway. An overhaul is long overdue. The school system is still built around an agrarian society that most of us don't live in. I mean, for the most part, we aren't working farms and having to go to school around farming hours and seasons of harvest. We're not. Most of us are not. We're also still teaching kids like this is pre-1970s, like go to school, graduate from high school, get a job, working for the government or big business, or go to college. I mean, come on, that's not today's United States. I have a future episode that I'm dedicating to that topic, so I won't go down that rabbit hole today. I will say that educational institutions need to spend this valuable time rethinking and reimagining their framework. Seriously. Where are your students, staff, and faculty lacking? In what ways? Where are they weak? Schools that were already online or had a strong online course engagement didn't blink once. Not once when COVID-19 blindsided us. Those who've taken the biggest hit are brick and mortar institutions that are 90 to 100% on campus only learning. Which is crazy to me, because how can you prepare students to work in the world where technology is the driver of our relationships and engagement with customers, vendors, etc., if they have no experience themselves engaging online? And no offense, but if your academic team, if your faculty are not present day in the field, engaging through commerce and business and so on and so forth, and using these technologies themselves, no wonder they are having an absolute culture shock of having to transition to using online platforms and using Zoom and WebEx and all these other platforms. Because they're like, oh my gosh. And you would have sworn that someone turned the lights out. You should have already been using these platforms. Even schools that offer online learning opportunities, they need to reimagine how to boost up their efforts, challenge their teams to come with better and stronger processes and technology. Like, honestly, how can you prepare students for the now and in the future if your instructors don't know how? You're going to have students that are going to start saying, so let me get this right. What are you really teaching me that I can't just learn from a book or going on YouTube? That's what you're going to start having. You're going to start having students that are going to turn around and they're going to start looking at Coursera, and they're going to start looking at Udemy and all these other platforms and say, well, I could just take all these classes here. Like, what do I need you for? Especially when they're seeing that a lot of employers are waiving some of these stupid requirements they have. You need a bachelor's degree in this, blah, blah, crap. Can you do the work is what we want to know. Because let's be very real. Every single company is still going to train you their way. They're still going to train you their way. It doesn't matter if you work 20 years at this other company. When you go to company B, they're going to say, great, you work for company A 20 years. They do their thing their way. This is how we do ours. So you need to learn our way. We have to reimagine this. Stop trying to follow the status quo of what once was. You got to look to the future. Period. This is a great time for other new and emerging companies to launch their own online platforms to compete with Zoom, Blackboard, WebEx, so on and so forth, right? We are a long, long way from being over this crisis. This is a long way from over. We're not at the top of anybody's mountain or curve. No, not even Magic Mountain, the amusement park in Southern California. We're not even on the top of that. This is going to be a steep and steady climb where we will slip from time to time. We'll try to regain our footing. So as we climb, focus on what you're learning in real time and how you can apply the lessons for future application. Because this won't be the last crisis you and your business faces. Another 10 years from now, we could be sucker punched by something else. What are you doing today to counterpunch that hit? Really? What are you doing? That's what you need to be thinking about. So don't be sitting back here spending all your time on Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and TikTok and everything else, and you're not planning for how am I going to pivot from this? Because this isn't just, oh, May 14th hits or May 29th hits and life is going to go back to how it was. No, it's not. No, it's not. And what would you do if all of a sudden everything stays shut down till August or September or October? Even if it doesn't, you should be planning for it. That's really what you should be doing. You really should. Okay, folks, you know what that is. You know that music. I got all hyped up in here. It's time to wrap up. Go our separate ways until next week. If you have questions or suggestions about this show, please email them to us at don'tcallismallbiz@gmail.com. I want to share a quote. I want to leave you with a quote from Andy Grove. He said, "Bad companies are destroyed by crisis. Good companies survive them. Great companies are improved by them." And lastly, I have this brilliant quote from Albert Einstein. He said, "The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them." With that, be sure to check us out on Facebook at Foreman and Associates, and on Instagram and Twitter at Foreman LLC. Our podcast Twitter handle is It Ain't Small. Be sure to also follow us and share us with your friends, colleagues, and family. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Natasha L. Foreman. Reach out to me, say hello, share your story. I look forward to meeting you. I want to make sure I give proper credit for this show theme song. It's called Higher Up. It's by Shane Ivers. Thank you for tuning in to the Don't Call It Small Business Podcast and for sharing these episodes with others and for your continued support. And don't forget what I tell you on each and every episode. Don't call what you're planning, thinking, dreaming, or doing, little or small. Go big or go bold or go nowhere. I'll see you here next week for episode 38 of Don't Call It Small. And of course, I'll share some entrepreneurs that you should get to know. Have a super awesome day and week.